It's weird running a music YouTube as I do. I feel some compulsion to cover mainstream music news. Every now and then the music business seems to, something happens and it manages to cross over into mainstream culture. And mainstream news channels cover it. The last one was Bob Dylan, not Bob Dylan, Bob Villan, at Glastonbury, calling for the death of the IDF soldiers. And what was the other thing he did? Saying that we can't have our country back. And that upset some, and some people loved it. But the fact was, a musician that is complete shite, managed by manipulating the media, either deliberately or accidentally, to gain far more traction than they deserve, because their music is rubbish and no one wants to talk about his actual music. And the fact that this was a real blatant rip-off, not just a rip-off, but I think actually playing over elements from Rage Against the Machine while he rapped in a sort of fake accent that wasn't obviously his, about stuff that the middle classes would clap along to very politely and go, yes, we agree so much. And that there's no real edge to that music whatsoever. There is nothing revolutionary or countercultural about that. And we don't live in a time where a musician could actually do something that was truly countercultural, because it would create waves. And in fact, if you want to know what's happened culturally that has moved us from the rock and roll era to this era we're in now, where rock and roll no longer is important, is the fact that we've moved culturally from a place where we valued, albeit grudgingly, revolutionary aspects in music, people saying stuff that we didn't want to hear, to now this sort of cod fake revolutionary stance, which basically just champions the establishment and the educated middle classes, but does not actually say anything which is truly upsetting to the establishment, because if they were to do that, they would find themselves in a whole pile of poo. I know that because I have a YouTube, and I know that when I'm talking about music or I'm talking about politics, that you have to tread so carefully. I wish it was valued that I could come on here and say what I think, and maybe say some stuff that the establishment don't like, and that be valued. But I know what would happen to me if I was to do that. Now, this video, as you saw in the thumbnail, is about the Coldplay incident, the latest incident to happen related to music, which of course has nothing to do with the actual music, does it? And here I am grudgingly doing a video about it. Now, I wasn't going to do it. That's why I'm a bit late to the party. Not a good YouTuber. Slapped me on the wrist. I should have been there straight off. I should have sensed that and had this up on YouTube straight away. But I thought it's got nothing to do with me. I don't like Coldplay, and it's not really about music. And I like to talk about music on my channel. That's what I talk, is actual music and the quality of music and what makes music great and all that type of stuff. Now, Chris Martin has featured on this channel. In fact, I interviewed Chris Martin a few months ago. If you want to go and search out that interview, and very enjoyable that was. And I appreciated his little video he did with Jacob Collier. I thought he seemed like a nice guy. Chris Martin does seem like a nice guy, doesn't he? The music might be rubbish, but he does seem like a nice guy. I tell you who really embodies that for me is James Blunt. James Blunt is one of my favourite people on the planet. He's very English. He's quite posh, but he knows it. He knows how to do it. He's been in the army, so we know he can handle himself. So although he seems like a sort of a, fake emotional singer-songwriter, if you had to go at him, he'd know some pressure points. And if you got stuck, say, in the wilderness, say if there was like some sort of a apocalypse in this country, some sort of 28 days scenario that emerges, if you're with James Blunt, you're probably going to last longer. And I respect all that in a pop star, even though his music might be really turgid. I respect it. He's very funny online, nobody can really get to him. I like that. He's got a thick skin. We should all have a thick skin like James Blunt. And Chris Martin's not quite in the same bracket, but I'm sure if he was here and I was there, well, I have chatted to him as we got on like a house on fire. So yes, I've got nothing against Chris Martin. And I think part of this news story is the very English way in which Chris Martin sort of cracked a joke. And in cracking that joke, it's very nonchalant, very English. See, us English people part of our revolutionariness, part of our counterculturalness is in our humour. And Chris Martin was able to pull on that very effectively, thus creating the biggest meme on the planet. So what is this meme? Shall I tell you what happened? Do you need me to tell you what happened? So this bloke called Andy Byron, right? He's the CEO of a company called Astronomy. I have looked up Astronomy. In fact, I've got their company on my laptop now. Do you want to see? I've got it here, right? So I've been trying to work out what they do. I can't work out what they do because I'm really old and thick and I'm not really technically minded. They definitely do something technical. They've got a whole bunch of clients there. They seem like a very important company. Why Astronomy? Right, I'll read out. I'll tell you why. Because it's a better way to develop and deliver data products. Data is more important than ever. Unlock the full potential of your data teams with managed orchestration, unified operations, and full observability in one data ops platform. So, and then there's a diagram. I don't know what he does. What's this about? Some of you will know because I've got progressive rock fans, and most progressive rock fans know nothing about music, but know loads about this stuff, don't they? It's not just about connecting systems, it's about doing it faster and better. Astro enables data teams to seamlessly build, run and observe all their data products within a unified data ops platform. What the hell's a data ops platform? Shall I look it up? See, this is the thing about this. When I heard this story, I thought, yeah, he's the CEO of this company. That obviously make it, why this affects it. Data ops is a collaborative data management practice focused on improving the speed, quality and reliability of data delivery by applying DevOps principles to data analytics and management. It aims to break down silos between data producers and consumers, fostering automation, promoting a culture of continuous improvement in how data is handled. This is, I still don't really understand what that means and what he was head of. But if it's what I think it is, I mean, he is basically enabling Satan, isn't he? If that's what he's doing. Data.
I'm learning so much. Is this customer service?
Because there is none.
He's been a real addition to the team. Prices are up, hold times have doubled, and some fees are so hidden we can't even find them.
Data. You know, when I was teaching education, it was all about data. You had to justify everything with data. And so the whole thing didn't become about teaching kids. It became about shuffling data around. Data. And I'm sure now the thing is that just as I left, AI was coming in. So people were able to use AI to manage this data. So we hand over this thing that we have put on a pedestal as being the thing that we hire and fire by, the thing that we create all our decisions by. And now we hand it over to AI, which is, I think, is what they're doing. They're using AI to basically handle big data. I don't know. Right. I tell you, he's one of them though, isn't he? Right. Now, he goes to this Coldplay concert. He's married, okay? He's an oldish bloke, but he's obviously very, very rich. Because when you just look at a photograph of his wife, she's in a way higher, strata of looks than he is. So, he's been able to pull this younger, pretty wife. But he chooses to go off with some woman he works with, who's not quite in the same league as the wife. See, that never goes down well. And he's there, and he's with this. He's committing adultery with his mistress, basically, at a Coldplay concert. And he's got his arms around her. And the big camera swoops around and films them in an embrace. Chris Martin says something like, they're either very shy or they are having an affair, because as soon as they see the camera, they ducked. Idiots. This bloke is dealing with data. He's supposed to be clever CEO. What does he do there? He just does nothing. Right, he just carries on, right? And if it does get found out, he's going to be able to cover it better, right? Idiots. But no, he decides to go, oh, they're going to be filmed, and he jumps down. This is a bloke who's supposed to know about these things. Absolute idiot. Right, so he ducks down, and someone's filmed it. They upload it to TikTok, and before you know it, it's gone viral. And it's become the biggest thing on the planet at the moment. And it's so memey that they're now copying their pose of an embrace, and you can drop any two people into that, you know, you want, really. Anybody that seems to have a dubious relationship, I'll make one up now. You could have, say, Trump being cuddled by Putin. There we go. That would be one of these memey things. I'm sure someone's done that. Who else could we? You could have. Here's a good one for the proggers. You know, maybe I might do this with AI for this video, but I doubt it because I can't be asked putting the effort in. You never know. See, I'm decorating at the moment. I haven't got the time really. I should be painting my house. But if I get, if I get like an hour or so, I might spend a large part of my day coming up with some really awful meme with, say, you could have Dave Gilmour being cuddled by Roger Waters. How about that one? Shall I do that one and see if I can get my own little prog meme based around this? Yes, you see. And of course, once everybody saw this, they were absolutely disgusted, weren't they? Absolutely disgusted. That sort of moral thing that the general public have when they see something that's not right, and they all rise up, you know, with their pitchforks, you know, like the villagers with their pitchforks and their bloody torches out to go and get Frankenstein. You know, this is what we've got going on now, and everybody, but they're not doing it by going around to the bloke's house and doing all that, because they know that the just desserts will be his life being ruined because of the fact that this is everywhere. And the pretty wife's at home, God knows what she thinks, you know, if everything was all right, going all right. She had a rich husband, nice house, you know, all this stuff going on, everything was great. And then overnight, bang, what's she doing now? Probably living in a silo somewhere, waiting for it to blow over. Andy Byron and his mistress have not made a comment, although a fake comment came out. So, you know, you rightly or wrongly, there has been a huge outcry about the moral abomination of this episode. And what is that? Well, it's of course the fact that someone who's supposedly intelligent, that runs a data company, is a Coldplay fan. Obviously that's what it is, isn't it? He's been caught in the act. You know, no wonder he's embarrassed. I'd be embarrassed. Can you imagine me there? You know, imagine me there with my arm around my mistress. I haven't got one, in case my wife's watching. I haven't got a mistress, so there's no point in, you know. But imagine I did have a mistress. I got my arm around her, and I get filmed at a Coldplay concert. What's worse, the fact that I've got a mistress? I'm sure that if I utilise that well on YouTube, I could probably, you know, with the right sort of spin, you know, for a lot of the older men who watch this will go, oh, you see, Andy, he said, life of the old dog yet? No, the old dog, we have the old dog, you know. I say, let sleeping dogs lie. Right, that's what I would have said. But no, the old dog has got life in it. Obviously, if I was in that situation. I mean, this bloke's a grey-haired fellow, isn't he? He, you know, we could be respecting him, really. You know, and who knows, his wife might be awful. He might have been very unhappy. He might have found love with this new woman and been trapped in a relationship because he was in such an important position that he knew that it would jeopardise his situation. So he had to keep it quiet, even though he was massively in love with this woman. You know, that does happen. People are married and they meet someone else and they fall in love with them, you know, and they realise that, you know, and they take it out by going to watch Coldplay, you know. I mean, it's like everyone has their low points. So yes, the embarrassment of being caught out liking Coldplay must be awful. It must be a terrible cross to bear is the only way to describe this, really. A cross to bear. He's bearing his cross. Well, he's not, because he's gone into hiding as well. They're all hoping it will blow over. But the social networking powers that be, so they're not going to let it grow, you know, because it's everyone loves it so much. We're all relishing it. Now, why are we relishing in it, you know? And I was being a bit facetious and cracking a joke. It's not really because the bloke's a Coldplay fan. And there's nothing wrong with liking Coldplay. If you like middle-of-the-road pap, right, churned out for the masses by a band that gave up many, many years ago and are just there for the money, right, that is perfectly okay. It's not life and death. It's not brain salad surgery, is it? It's not. It's simply, you know, people like that music and they go and see it. And Chris Martin commands the stage. He is very good. He is a stadium artist. There's very few of those. And he commands that stage, which he did. you know. And as soon as he saw that thing, he looked up and he saw that big circular projector, and he went, "Ah, they're having a bit of a thing, ding dong, they are." And he cracked the right joke at the right time. I respect him for that. I do. I respect him for it. It's funny because sometimes I get a bit worried about the Muslims in my country trying to bring in Sharia law. We can't have Sharia law in the United Kingdom, he says. It's not right. We shouldn't have that because we have our own law system. If someone's done wrong, they get punished using the law, and that's very important, and we respect that. And us British people, we don't have our own courts, do we? But we do, don't we? There's this court of human opinion, isn't there? Common people opinion. The great unwashed can make a judgment. Now, a few years back, the way us British people dealt with this is we had our own justice system, a bit like Sharia law, right? And it was called the Jeremy Kyle Show. And in America, you had the other fella that did it, Jerry Springer, right? And so the great unwashed we brought out, and the other great unwashed would go, "Oh my God, we finally be represented on the TV," and they'd get all stuck in, you know, drinking their beer, you know, in the morning and watching it like this. "Oh, what that bloke there, he's been having it off with everybody, and they'd be all doing that. And then the middle class poshes were going, "Ooh, the Jeremy Kyle show is absolutely," I mean, I don't like to watch it, but I do, because you need to know what's going on with the lowers, don't you? And they're absolutely disgusting. I mean, I'm having an affair at the moment with my secretary at work, but that is much more. I mean, we keep it quiet. We're not advertising it, you know, doing, you know, lie detector tests and paternity tests and finding out, you know, none of these people know who their real fathers are. It's absolutely disgusting. I know who my father is. Yes, I do. Well, I think I know. And so this huge double standard exists, doesn't it? And, you know, the Jeremy Kyle show, well, you know, it sat there doing its thing. You could watch that in the morning, and people would come on and they would go through the court of Jeremy Kyle. That carried on until this bloke killed himself. Now, to be fair to Jeremy, it wasn't Jeremy's fault. They checked him out. They didn't know what was going on. They'd had, you know, tens of thousands of guests, and then this one bloke didn't seem to be quite right, and something went wrong. And at that point, we knocked it on the head. And that coincides, to me, with a certain shift culturally, where this stuff starts to get swept under the carpet. Let's sweep it all under the carpet. Let's pretend it's not there. And let's pretend the whole world is this sort of educated middle class. And let's start to get very, you know, righteous and sort of ignore these people and their horrible common lives. And for me, that has powered a whole host of things, including Coldplay. Now, Coldplay have no edge whatsoever. They're never going to say anything that upsets anybody, right? And they are loved, it seems, by all sections of society, including these CEO types, these millionaire types, who have swapped going to the opera, it seems, to actually going out where they're going to enjoy themselves, to a Coldplay concert. Now, in the 1980s, when we had this sort of yuppie contingent, before people like Jeremy Kyle, you know, exposed the truth, right? But in the 1980s, when Thatcher turned all the common people into sort of these yuppie types, and all the plasterers were making a ton of money, you know. Do you remember Loads of Money? Do you remember that? Loads of money. You wouldn't have, see, that is countercultural. Loads of money. You wouldn't have that now, would you? Would you? I don't know. Maybe you would. Maybe I'm being too extreme there.
Shut your mouth, Trey.
But the point is that way back then, when all that happened, and you had that sort of nouveau riche middle class, you know, elites emerging, which are just basically new money, they all loved Dire Straits, okay? Now, Dire Straits at the time I hated, because I was a proper music fan. I hated Dire Straits. I went to a school where all my friends, you know, all the sort of middle classy types who were going to go to university, you know, they were into indie music, they were into thrash metal. They definitely weren't into all the avant-garde experimental music I was into. They like Dire Straits, so they would come round to my house with a copy of Alchemy and put it on, saying, "You got to listen to this, and he's a really great guitarist." Now, the fact is, he is a really great guitarist, and the fact is that those albums are amazing. They're a little bit wimpy, you know, but side one of Love Over Gold is sublime. It's absolutely wonderful, and they do things that are very clever. Now, do they push the envelope? Not really. You don't expect Mark Knopfler to ever write a song, you know, that would upset the establishment, I suppose. But what he did is he made up for it by being musically great. Something, as I'm older now, I can look back and appreciate. You know, I can listen to the track Brothers in Arms, which is about, you know, the war, and listen to the song construction and the beautiful melody and the way Mark Knopfler, who's not a great singer, delivers it with the right emotional content, and most importantly, that beautiful guitaring on a Les Paul, you know, that sort of thick, slightly distorted sound that Mark Knopfler, you know, weaves so beautifully through that tune. And you hear all the nuances as his guitar reacts against his voice, you know, going back to the tradition of musicians that were truly countercultural, like Leadbelly and Woody Guthrie, and all that's in there. And I can hear all that now I'm older. You know, when I was younger and I just wanted to listen to Last Exit, you know, or whatever it was I was into, John Zorn at that point, you know, and I was listening to that type of stuff. I hated it. You know, I wanted my music to be countercultural. I wanted to listen to records, you know, that if my friends heard them, they would be upset by them. That's what I wanted at that point. But now I'm older and wiser, I can go back and listen to Dire Straits and hear the beauty, the musicality that comes from master musicians in a room playing together, which is what they were, without a doubt. And I've come on here and slated Dire Straits for comic reasons. There is an aspect of them, because of that sort of a yuppie adjacent thing that they had, that is easy to poke fun at. But I know how great they are. I've argued on this channel many a time that the side one of Love Over Gold is just absolutely incredible. Side two is great. That album is so great that it can almost be seen as a continuation of what Pink Floyd were doing at that time. And in 1983 or 84, when it came out, when we were expecting this great follow-up to The Wall, which ended up being the final cut, which, love it or hate it, I can remember as a younger man, my friend buying it and going and listening to it, and it being a bit of a disappointment. That the real legacy of Pink Floyd was actually in Dire Straits, something that no one else is going to say, and the sort of thing that you come here for me to say these sort of interesting musical observations. There's two noises then. That was my speaker switching off, and also I did not break wind. It does happen on my channels, but that time it wasn't. But listen, can you hear it? I sort of moved forward and it made a farty sound. You didn't need to know that, but I just didn't want in the comments to go, look at, you know, 22 minutes 44, where Andy did that, he broke wind. I did break wind on a video once. And the thing was, I was talking about a Jethro Tull live album. And so as I broke wind, I said the Jethro Tull live album name. I'm not going to say it here, because if you don't know it, you're going to have to look it up, and then you'll see that the Jethro Tull live album name was quite comedic next to me breaking wind. But this is all going off on a tangent, something that I do quite a bit, really. This is like an odyssey. We start off with this bloke, you know, getting found out at the Coldplay concert, and then we wander off into all this wonderful music. Jethro Tull, Dire Straits, all wonderful. Even some of the brilliant middle of the road stuff like Dire Straits. Some of the Sting albums in the late 80s we could put into that bracket without a doubt. But I love it. I can listen to that type of stuff, you know. I've actually got a Rick Astley album in the car at the moment called Free, and it's wonderful. It's very easy listening, and it's very wonderful. So for me, the big thing about this story is, yeah, the general public love it. It's like the aspect that kept the Jeremy Kyle show. They're going to vilify this bloke. He's done wrong as far as normal people are concerned, and he has to be castigated. And every time someone laughs to themselves and shares that meme, they're sharing it because they know it's embarrassing for that guy. That's why, because he got caught out. And worse than that, he got caught out by Chris Martin from Coldplay. All great. Didn't even know Coldplay are on tour at the moment. I'm sure every gig's sold out. Oasis are on tour. We know all about that. Black Sabbath did their gig. We know all about that. I didn't even know Coldplay are on tour. But they're on tour. There they are out and about doing their stuff. Great. Good on them. Now, people will say the obligatory thing in the comments that their first album was really good and the second album was good, And, I do believe that they can write a song. I do, and I think if you got to the real me, not the one that comes on here and tries to entertain you with these sorts of things. Oh, my eyes have got irritated now. It's like I'm going through what happened to Moses when the Egyptians wouldn't let him have what he wanted, so God would put all these trials. I feel like I'm having that at the moment. Whoa, I've had a bit of a funny turn. God's looking down and said, "Stop criticising Coldplay. Chris Martin is not there to make good music. He's there to show up the adulterous behaviour of certain CEOs, people in positions of power. Because I am a lefty. You should know this by now, Andy. God is a lefty. And I have shown my displeasure through my avatar, which is Chris Martin. He has shown it up, and rightfully, because if you ever remember the old Moses that you've just referred to and actually go back, he did bring down some of my rules. Do you remember when I appeared to him as a burning bush? And one of those is, thou shalt not commit adultery. Adulterers are as bad as murderers and all the other terrible fellows that I listed on that things, people who covet next door neighbours' goats. They're all really bad. There's a moral aspect to this, which is a bit, I don't know. But the reason why I wanted to come on is I wanted to get into the music, right? We have a music industry now where the musical aspect has gone so long ago, and nobody will do the moral thing that has happened to this gentleman where he's committed adultery in calling out a musician who is a millionaire, who has got all the privilege in the world, for making crap music. Why has that happened? Because culturally, we have decided that there is no such thing as good and bad when it comes to art and aesthetics. We have decided that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and everything is just a flat dynamic, and everything is as good as everything else. And into that void of nothingness where we have relinquished our ownership of beauty, aesthetics, which then that informs morality and ethics, because we have let go of that, and we no longer allow our art forms to affect that. And how do we do that? By not calling out the musicians that are crap, right? The subversive things that musicians did was to stand up and go, this Coldplay is crap. This is dinosaur rock. This is indulgent. It has no artistic value in any shape or form. And musicians would emerge and they would look through the lyrics of that Coldplay songs, and they would look at what musically is going on, and they would react against it. And then the next wave of newness would come in. And in criticising the crap music, this overblown, tired, old man CEO music, right? In criticising that, they would also criticise the subject matter of Coldplay, which has just come down to sort of almost like a Hallmark birthday card view of the world. It's like the sort of moral values of Love Actually set into music. It's a sort of middle class idyll. It's like the Bridget Jones of music. Now, I'm criticising a whole bunch of stuff here. Stuff that actually is liked by the aspiring working class, the aspiring great unwashed. They'll sit and lap up very, very posh people committing adultery if it's presented by Richard Curtis in a certain way. And that will all be very fun, wasn't it? I caught up with the second instalment of Bridget Jones the other day when she has the baby, and the whole paternity issue was dealt with great laughs and great fun and lots of jolly japes. And there was no way that anybody who, although seems to be a little bit down on their luck in their life, that every time something goes wrong, they can drive off to their parents' house, which is obviously a mansion in the countryside. This has always been the case. All of these films always have the parents that seem they're all, you know, oh, I'm not too sure what's going on, really. I'm the dad and I'm a bit of an idiot but I do own a mansion. I don't even know how I got it. You know precisely how you got it because you're not an idiot. But they want to portray it like that because it absolves them of their guilt. Right? It absolves them of their guilt. What's the real crime of this lot? The fact is they're running the show. Right, and it's their way, that their way is the way. That's the truth. And normal people have lost their voice completely. And there is no rock band, there is no television show, there is no film, there is no nothing that represents what people really think and feel at the moment. And so the only way they can express themselves is by sharing that meme because they see the posh bloke caught out doing something wrong. They don't really care that he's done something wrong. It's not the fact that he's committed adultery. They don't care about God coming down and pointing down at them and saying, you know, you're a bad person. It's not that. It's about shaming the rich person. And the educated upper middle classes, the aspirational middle classes, they have created this because it covers their tracks and no one dares call it out. I spoke to a young musician the other day and I felt sorry for the guy. I did an interview with him and there was no way I could put this interview out. I haven't spoken about this in depth. It really did shock me that as soon as we start discussing certain things, because this kid wanted to form a band and he wanted it to be a real band, guitar, bass and drums, that actually was not like a kneecap, was not like a Bob Vylan, was actually saying things that were politically really on fire. And as he was telling me about this, at a certain point, let's say the establishment in his case, his parents, and the whole thing that backs up their worldview, you know, the sort of Coldplay end of the world, suddenly stepped in and said, you can't have this conversation anymore. This is going on all the time. This is going on all the time. Every time those educated middle class people come out and they are saying something which is the underlying thing, that this should be stopped and this should be banned and we shouldn't have this, you know. Every time they do that, they are really looking after themselves. Now, what has this got to do with the music, right? Well, rock and roll was never really about the music. I come on this channel and I champion the actual music because as rock and roll developed, out of this became incredibly sophisticated music. And there is an arc that happens in rock and roll that happened a number of times. It's no longer happening. And this is really what this video is about. It's the fact that this no longer happens. There was an arc, and this arc would come out. It would create a new novel form of music. This music was always, by novel, I mean, it wasn't liked by the intelligentsia, it wasn't liked by the elites. It was just liked by the normal people, and they loved it and they jumped on it because they could hear something in them that spoke to them. And then the genius emerges in that novel piece of music, and that novel piece of music is moved into something that is profound, you know. An example of that here in the UK would be the Beatles, and an example of that in America would be like Frank Zappa or Brian Wilson. Now we have a sophisticated form of music and the elites start to go, this is actually quite artistically good. And the normal people go, yeah, we've now got our own artistic form. We've got a sophisticated thing, and I adhere to that. And that then creates this golden age of high art, you know. And for me, in rock and roll, that was Pink Floyd, that was Yes, it was Genesis, it was the albums of the early 70s, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Weather Report. This is really high level music on a same level as a Mozart for me. They are my Mozart. But rightly, once this gets so removed from what the normal person's view is, they go, we can't now use this to have a voice. And so they pull it down. And in pulling it down, one of the things that nobody sees is they retain certain aspects of it. Progressive rock, which seems like the anathema to punk, actually took about 60-70% of progressive rock and they moved it into punk, and it was put into like like a little seed. And once punk had done its thing of rebalancing everything, that seed grew out into pop music in the 1980s. So the pop music in the 1980s was informed deeply by progressive rock, far more than it was about punk. These new forms could take something and turn it into something else. Now, that something else slowly degrades through punk, new wave, into proper independent music, into the idea of indie music to indie songwriter music. And eventually, when you get to the creation of Coldplay, you see a move over from indie music to the mainstream. And it's incredible how far Coldplay have traveled from taking over the mantle of this sort of singer-songwriter indie band, you know, thing. And so they have part of their elements in Radiohead. They have part of their elements actually like the grunge bands. They've part of their elements are in sort of bands like Ned's Atomic Dustbin here in the UK. Who else would be in that? The Fall. It's really incredible to see the travel, which is the same travel from, say, the Seeds and MC5 through to Pink Floyd. You know, it's the same travel. You know, Pink Floyd were around long enough that the punks, you know, someone like John Lydon adores the Syd Barrett Pink Floyd because it has all the values that they had, but they travelled, you know, and I'm sure he respects where they travelled to. But this is the real structure of rock and roll. This is the thing that this doesn't exist anymore. So you're never going to get a news story which is about the music. You are never going to get that. You know, you are never going to get the thing and go, isn't this a shock? This 19-year-old kid has rocked up into a recording studio, made an instrumental album with 2 20-minute tunes on it and put it out, and it's sold, you know, 20 million copies, like Mike Oldfield. I knew of Mike Oldfield when I was a kid because he was on the news. We used to have a kids program called Blue Peter, and they went over to see Mike Oldfield in his studio around the time he was doing Incantations, and he created it. This has changed my life, watching that video in 1979, whenever it was. Right? Because people were interested in the music. They were interested in the music. And people's no longer interested in the music. And so all it becomes now is one poshy band like Coldplay making its poshy music, which is then attracts, like, you know, jam attracts, you know, poshy wasps. It attracted a whole bunch of poshy people who were there slumming it, you know, when they should have been at the opera. It never would have happened at the opera, but there they are. And this bloke gets caught out, and the great unwashed go, the bloke gets caught out, but they can't see what they're watching is the realm of poshies playing out in front of them as their entertainment, because that's what our entertainment has become. It's become what the poshies do, you know, and the great unwashed do their best to try and copy that look, you know. So we've swapped Jeremy Kyle for Love Island now. That's where we're at, and there is nothing truly revolutionary. And the kids that can see this at 16 years old and normally would be snapped up by a record industry when this is going to really go direct to the youth, they're going to love this, has turned its back on them. And so all the music stories are like cod fake, like everything else. And that is what that story for me represents. I know I'm the only one who will do a video like this on YouTube and talk about it in this way, but I'm glad I did now. I as you can see, I haven't travelled over to my main studio to film this. I've got up, I'm sat at the bottom of my bed. I thought, should we try and see what happens? Which meant if it didn't work, I'd just delete it or... But no, this will go up. I've managed to capture some interesting stuff here. So, yeah, I'm pleased I did it now. So I'm now going to edit this as quick as I can because I do want to put some pictures in this one. Just to illustrate the thing. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it started off quite funny. I hope that it will jump on the last few embers of this meme social networking phenomenon that's going on, and maybe I can get a few viewers to this channel that have come from outside that will then stay because they go, well, this bloke was actually quite interesting. Those of you who didn't think I was interested, you just thought it was a meandering old man just talking nonsense and going off, then shoo, You could all shoo. Don't like the video, don't subscribe. Definitely don't become a patron. I have a Patreon down below. You can become a free member where you'll have even more content you won't like. And if you really are a masochist, you could then pay to become a member and all that bit of the Patreon. Please, if you didn't like it, do not reward me with a tip in my PayPal tip jar. And the membership sections, which I have now just added a new membership section to here. I am going to be doing some drum tuition stuff. These videos never do that well. I will be doing some on the main channel, but a lot of them I will be doing on the membership section of here. I've created a separate membership section, which is dirt cheap. You don't get to watch the videos early. You don't get to watch all the other membership videos I've got going on, but you can watch the drum ones for a very small price. And I promise to deliver on there a different aspect of drum tuition. So the few drummers that watch this, if you sign up to that, you'll be getting quite a few videos. And the other thing I'm doing, for those of you interested, is I am filming my practice sessions. So I'm going to be talking about practice and how you have to practice, but then you can go and watch the practice session. The exercises are all in there, but I want you to watch the context and order in the way in which I do them. This is a very hard thing to explain. So yeah, if you're a drummer, sign up to this new way of teaching drums, and let's see if I can impart some knowledge to you guys, like I used to in the old day to actual drummers in real time in my lessons, which I no longer do. So please don't message me about drum lessons at the moment. I'm not doing any drum lessons, so that's that. So there's all the news bit at the end of the video. I think I'm done now. Are we done? Goodbye. See you all.